Let's talk now to historian and music scholar, Professor Musa Xulu, who joins us virtually from Richards Bay this morning. Prof, thank you so much for your time this morning. And with me, my colleague Mabutu Ngobo, wearing his hat as both journalist and historian this morning. A few people have said this morning, as we've brought tributes and thoughts and views on his life, about the Prince being a custodian of Zulu culture. Your thoughts as you received the news of his passing this morning?
Thank you very much. Let me firstly pass my condolences to the Buthelezi family, as well as the royal family. And I must say, the IFP and all other people that really were surrounding him throughout his life. Yes, he was a custodian of Zulu culture. I can bet that without him, maybe the Zulu kingdom, as we see it today, would not have existed in this growth and as an international brand. He was very much concerned about maintaining the Zulu kingdom as a brand, but also not just the kingdom, all its structures and systems. And he was very close to Amakhosi, almost all Amakhosi, and he came from a rich history of political affiliation to the ANC Youth League, and was raised by Pixley Sagaseme and Inkosi Albert Ntuli. So he is a very complex character, but when it comes to traditions, he knew almost everything. My own PhD on Zulu traditional Amahubo songs, he had a lot to tell me what to say and what is behind Ama songs and their meaning in terms of the cultural history. So he was so rich with it.
We've been learning quite a bit, of course, also about his bloodline and the important role that his mother played in his life in really stamping those roots and the importance of his culture that he took with him, both into the political realm and then as his role in connection to the Zulu monarch and the Zulu royal family. In your opinion, how important was that relationship and the education he received from his mother?
Well, his mother was his cornerstone, really, is the one that raised him and taught him a lot of things about Zulu culture, Zulu history, Zulu traditions, and everything else. And she herself was a musician, so she recorded the history of the kings through her music. And he himself was a very good musician who understood the role of music in society, in Zulu society, and in preserving history. His mother, as you know, was a daughter of King Dinuzulu, who was son of King Tshwayo, who had fought at the Sandton. So they came from a very rich history, which ultimately was able to assist with the rebranding of the Zulu kingdom. It is very great to have had him in South Africa, because he was not only focusing on Zuluness, but most of traditional leaders throughout South Africa and the SADC region always went to him when they wanted advices on how to move forward, both before the advent of democracy and after the advent of our 1994 democracy. So he was very much not only focusing on Zuluness, but I think a lot of other people who are not necessarily Zulus gained a lot from him.
Kapashe, it's Mabuto here now. You're one of the, I think you are the only person with the 2 PhDs that I know. Tell us about Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, starting from when he was born in 1928. We know that he spent his young years, his early years at KwaDlamahlahla at KwaNongoma under the then eNCA of Amazulu, eNkosi uSolomon. Tell us from that period going forward, his relationship with the Zulu monarch, especially when the new king, King Goodwill Zwelithini Kabheka uZulu, took over, and to the current period when we have the new king.
Thanks, Mapolova. Maybe I must not sound like I'm bragging, but actually it's 3 PhDs. Yeah, no. You know his name, Gaja. There was some tensions before he was born between the royal family and the Buthelezi family. You must remember that throughout history, the Buthelezi played a central role in the making of the Zulu kingdom. But before he was born, just before he was born in 1928, there was that tension, which was resolved through intermarriage. So the King Solomon offered his sister to Nkosi Mathole Buthelezi as a way of saying, no, let us reconcile, let us work together. And so when he was born as a male, he was named Gaja, the branch. That a branch has been born now, which is going to strengthen the Zulu kingdom again, once more, from the Buthelezi angle.
This one.
And it has got a lot of meaning as a result of that. Yes. He grew up, then he went to Adams College.
He says I must watch.
Then he went to and so on. When he came back, his central role really was to strengthen the Zulu kingdom. From 1954, he was prime minister to the late King Bheki Zulu, and then he was also King Bheki Zulu passed on in 1968. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was central to ensuring the rise to power of King Zwelithini between 1968 and 1971. And one of the good things that happened, you may interpret it in many other ways, was as a result of having resources in the KwaZulu homeland government, he was able to use those resources to profile the Zulu kingdom and to strengthen the Zulu royal house, to bring back all the old ceremonies, cultural ceremonies that used to be there as cornerstones of the kingdom. And he worked very closely for close to 50 years with King Zwelithini. Then when King Zwelithini passed on, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi played a central role in ensuring that the current King Misuzulu rises to the throne. I mean, it was all in the media, all of you, everybody in the country and all over the world saw him, the role that he played. At some stage, sometimes even we as historians, as cultural historians, were doubtful whether it was going to happen or not, but he remained convicted. And some of our interviews I had with him made it to be easy for me to get through all the interviews that explained the role and how it had to be King Misuzulu rising up. So he was a working director of Zulu cultural history and knew the rules and laws and traditions and customs, when to apply what, when, how.
Yes, Professor, and thanks for correcting me that you've got 3 PhDs and not 2 PhDs, as I earlier said. But nevertheless, you are one of the most highly educated person. Tell us now, we saw, as you've just said, that he played a significant role in ensuring that the current king, King Misuzulu Zwelithini, takes over. But of late, there was that not so good relationship between the two. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, that one is itchy because really, when it started to happen, we were all aware that it was not going to end well. It became clear around the issues of Ngonyama Trust. And at some stage, even I personally, being not a royal family person, wrote a letter to His Majesty the King to ask him to use his authority and reconcile with Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Because, of course, of the role that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi had played in his life, and that he had a lot to learn from being friendly to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi rather than having a rift with him. Unfortunately, it didn't happen until his death. And I know, because we exchanged letters at some stage late in June, that he was very depressed with the kind of situation that had developed between him, the rift that had developed between him and His Majesty the King. We were hoping that it was going to be possible for them to sit down again and iron out their differences. It didn't happen. In fact, what happened was that there were more attacks from certain people who were releasing statements daily from the office of His Majesty. I don't know whether that was through sanctions, that was sanctioned or not. But when he left, I'm sure Prince Mangosuthu was a very disappointed man around that. Nevertheless, it doesn't take away the fact that he played such a central role in making sure that there was a smooth transition.
Professor, let's shift a little bit to politics. South African history will be incomplete without mentioning his name, especially the transition period from the 80s up to the democratic South Africa. Talk to us about that. I understand that some, they see him as a villain, some they see him as a struggling hero. Can you talk to us about that, his role in the South African politics?
Look, when he founded the cultural movement, which later became the IFP in 1975, there was talk, and it's in many other literature, that it was an instruction from the ANC in exile. And therefore, between 1975 and I must say 1978, the relationship between Buthelezi and the ANC in exile was very good. It's only in 1979 where they had a meeting in London, and the meeting did not go very well. And then, of course, the animosity started to grow from there. Now, when he came back from London, of course, he had to, because he was running the KwaZulu homeland, decide what to do next. I think his instincts told him to make the IFP even stronger and stronger through getting a lot of Zulu sentiments central to that. The 1980s, unfortunately, from 1985 here in KZN, 1984 in Gauteng, saw a lot of violence happening between the IFP and those that were affiliated to the ANC, firstly the UDF and those such bodies. But later, when the ANC was released, was unbanned in 1990, especially in KZN and Gauteng, there was a lot of fighting between the IFP and the ANC. The period between 1990 and 1994, before the elections, was very tense, was the tensest ever in terms of those kinds of relations. So if you looked at that fighting from one perspective, you would say maybe he had no choice, because there was a lot of also propaganda on the radio stations from exile. So maybe I think he felt that he was under threat, and then of course there was a lot of fighting, which is unfortunate. I must say though that towards the end of his life, he has been adamant that he would like to leave Earth after the ANC and the IFP have reconciled and start working together as one movement or as sister organizations. That has not happened. I remember last year I went to interview him about just before the Ungena Espine of the King, and he told me aside that is one of the issues that he's very unhappy about, because now he was always saying that he's living on borrowed time. He was hoping that the ANC leadership was going to respond to his many letters that he had been writing to look at how this can be done. Now, in the period leading to 1994, you'll remember there was a lot of drama in South Africa when the IFP said they were not going to go to the polls unless the issues of the Zulu kingdom, the Zulu monarch and monarchy were clearly spelled out in the interim constitution. Eventually that happened. And then the IFP entered the election some 7 days before the actual 27th of April 1994. That made a turning point, because the IFP was able to hold on to power in KZN with a 50% plus one majority, and they were able to, for 10 years, remain the ruling party in KZN. And of course, after 2004, they began to dwindle. as we all know now, the IFP has been really coming back as a full force in the political landscape of especially KwaZulu-Natal. I don't know what's going to happen next going forward.
Okay, we thank the professor so much for his time. Mabuto, anything more from you?
No, that's all from me. But maybe, Professor, before you go, because in one of your PhDs, you did music, cultural music, amahubo. You also said that you consulted with him when you were doing that PhD. Maybe you can share with our viewers at home what advice did he give you? Maybe on a lighter moment, if you still remember some of those songs, amahubo, that you shared with him, he shared with you. You can also share with our viewers at home. I'm sure they won't mind to see you singing, Prof.
Saze sangena kanongu mahebe obalele mpakwesabela usitetele singene kwanongo sangena ko bebu heba hebe obalele mpakwezulu that was the Ihuwa song of King Dinuzulu when Usuthu fought with Mandagazi. And of course, Usuthu was very, very assertive in the battle of Kwandono there by the town of Nangoma. Usuthu arrived early in the morning, and the Amabuto of Mandagazi, which is another faction of the Zulu royal household, were still asleep. So it tells that history that when they came, the others were still asleep. And then Usuthu was able there to win, like before even dawn, they had been able to defeat the Mandagazi faction. But under King Zulitini, that factionalism between the Zulu royals of Usuthu, which is the ruling house, and the Mandlakazi had been now corrected, and they worked together very well. And Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was central in facilitating the reconciliation between the two.
Okay, Professor Musa Xulu, thank you so much for that, giving us his thoughts, but also the sounds that come to mind as we continue to bring you tributes to the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. We thank him for his time this morning.